There is something particular that I find very beautiful about what Dan Stapleton says when he says, "Tell me you didn't bother to read or watch the review that you're super mad about without telling me that you didn't bother to read or watch the review that you're super mad about." And the reason I find this beautiful is, in a way, it's poetic to the numbers. And what we've seen IGN, Dan, and what I know very well to be true is that it's like expecting you guys to watch or listen to my videos. That's a false expectation, one where the data clearly reflects it, outside of those who are just popping in to spew some kind of hate or bot farms out there roaming around on the internet. Any content creator worth their salt knows that everything that they produce does not necessarily mean it's going to be received the way that they intend or going to be consumed the way that they hope. And so naturally, if you look at just a typical trend line for me, that is how videos perform across the board. Anyhow, I want to talk about Dan Stapleton today, his review, his viewpoint, not as an attack on him. And so I would encourage you guys always go and consume, read, and then look and think of it critically and not as a form of attack or any kind of aggressive behavior. You're better than that. And that's where we're going to explore today. But I want to highlight some of the things he said, some of the data that we actually have that contradicts what people think reviews are, and use this as hopefully a good discussion point, a good critique of the whole process. And hopefully, if nothing else, we can learn something, we can grow from this, and overall just generally have a better day because of it. So hello everyone, and welcome to another Starfield discussion video. My name is Brian, if you happen to be new around here, and if you're a part of the amazing 74,532 of you guys who are taking on the challenge to become everyday millionaires, to correct some of the mistakes, to fight against the lies that you've been fed your whole freaking life, and change your family tree. Welcome in and welcome back. If you haven't yet joined, I think the last time I looked, 17% of you guys are a part of that 74,000. No worries. You're welcome here whenever you want and you're ready to take on that challenge. But let's start with some tweets from Dan. I'm going to kind of show you what I've said publicly about this, and we've got a lot of data to jump into, and I'm very curious about your thoughts, especially at the end of this video. So Dan says, "I strongly encourage you to read the review that you're angry about. It answers many questions you have. Spoiler alert, I literally said that I liked it. In fact, if you go read Dan's review, which you should, let's not sit here and say that you should avoid the review. I think it's a review worthy of reading because it does give you that insight. But that in and of itself is the problem. What IGN, what these scores means nothing. And actually, I'm going to show you exactly why. But here's what I said about it all. I said the beauty of the statement is that Dan knows very well that the vast majority of people don't read or watch the reviews. So he's either forgotten that all of a sudden, or in what I would consider the worst case scenario, he's banking on that fact. And whether or not we want to admit it, we know that any ad-driven media source thrives off of controversy. And I don't know if he's intending to try and be controversial, but that's where I think we get in and should explore a little bit of the data. Now, Sudden Susamaker, Bisky.social, in this case, says it's not quite as bad as the top bar anymore, but the review scale is still screwed up. Removing the arbitrary subjective numbers that would force people to actually read the reviews to get an idea of what the reviewer actually thought. You can see here two forms of time. The current modern review score, where basically anything below almost just slightly below an 8 is just sucky. 8 to 9 is average, 9 and above is good, and then you see really good, very good, great, possible game of the year slicing in at that 10. But if you look at the data from the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s reviews, you can see here anything that was an 8 or above is possibly game of the year. Anything below an 8 is great to really good. Good ends up being that 6 to 7, and the average ends up being a 4 to 6. But that's not how it pans out. This isn't. They aren't putting games in a grade, kind of like a Belgrade curve or anything like that. No, when we look at statistical analysis, we can see that this is very well strongly shifted into that mindset. If it's not a 10, it's not a 10. If it's not a 9, etc. And I was guilty of this when I was growing up in my 20s and 30s. I ended up getting into this habit that if it wasn't a 10, it wasn't worth my time. And I've learned since then that that's completely false. Like, identify the games and genres you like, find reviewers that you align with, and that's where everything's really kind of shifted. And we'll talk about that here just more in a second. I want to highlight Foxy Games here says, We just want Xbox to compete with games that aren't Forza, Gears. Xbox has no games. Starfield releases to an 87 Metascore, higher than Miles Morales Returnal and Horizon Forbidden West. I love all those games, but now the goalpost has moved. And Starfield is a mid-game, didn't get a 90 plus. And I've seen that, and the reason I wanted to bring up Foxy is I've seen that sentiment echoed in the own comment section here on the channel. So I think that is a good summary of didn't get a 90 plus. And I honestly think if it did get a 90 plus, they'd say, why isn't it a 95? And that's essentially just console war BS that we unfortunately all have to deal with. Peter tweets out, the guy at IGN did not deduct points from Fallout 4 and Elden Ring for not having a minimap, but they did this to Starfield. Should show you how dishonest they are. And in this tweet, he's quote tweeting him saying, it's also the worst possible way to play Xbox, from Xbox saying Xbox is a great way to play Xbox. The thing is, though, I'm going to say, I actually align in a way with what Dan is saying here. He's doing it in a memeing kind of way. At least that's the interpretation that I draw from his words. But the reality is the best way to play Xbox in my mind is on a PC, right? Like that is the best way to play. However, the second best in my mind is, is an Xbox. But I get the salt there. I understand the frustration. But also this is where it gets interesting, in my opinion, because when you start to look at previous reviews, he gave Fallout 4 a 9.5. Now, that's not something that I align with. Fallout isn't my series. It isn't my genre. People were asking me the other day, and I like fantasy and I like sci-fi. I'm not really so big into the post-apocalyptic mindset. I do enjoy that for the movies from time to time, but Fallout in and of itself was never kind of that amazing or appealing to me. And so I would say, personally speaking, from my experience so far with Starfield, I don't like numbered scales. So it falls into a must-own, purchase for me. I believe in it's either a buy, it's a wait to buy on discount or Game Pass, or it's an avoid. And it's clearly, in this case, a buy for me. So I would think that would kind of switch. Fallout 4 for me would be an avoid. And it's a strong word, because I know a lot of people out there like Fallout 4. It's just not my thing, That's not for me to recommend you avoid it. It's just like, no, not really kind of the thing. And thus that's me living out my principles right then and there. Now, here's where I want to get, I think, kind of explore a little bit of interesting. This is not yet class dismissed, so you do not need to run for the hills just yet. We will be talking about something really cool, really powerful here in class dismissed, and hopefully it's something that encourages you to continue on. But Vampire Nosebleed says, I'm not sure what you're trying to say about Starfield. It can't be, 7s can't be true. Starfield can only be a 10 out of 10. Neither, actually. I'm not saying either of those things. I have no frustration or qualms or issues that Dan decided to rate it a 7. It's a subjective opinion about a game, but it's unfortunate that we still use that old dinosaur of a system to flex on others, right? Like at the end of the day, like he can rate it a 7, that's just fine. That doesn't impact my enjoyment of the game. And that's the hope that I want the industry to get to, because just like what Thurman says here, watching streams is how I judge what games to buy and play. And this is because it's the best reviewer of the games that I want to play. The only downside is that performance of the live stream can be mistaken for poor game performance. We've seen this shift. This shift it's not happening. It is happened. And what we end up having in this case, and where again, not necessarily do I have any inside knowledge onto Dan's thoughts or IGN's, process here, but it does feel like more and more and more gamers are not trusting those major sources, which used to be such a staple in our everyday consumption. I used to even be subscribed to their premium system back in the day, because I was just over consuming IGN media, and that is not the case anymore. And a lot of that, I think, is in part to reviews. I think a lot of that's in part to the review process, locked behind doors, unseen by eyes, to have it drop before the game's out. And I think the fact that they have it drop before the game's out is something to be commended. But what it really boils down to is that I would wonder to see if IGN would ever change their review scale, but also change the review process in which you let the reviewers themselves live stream it. That takes a whole other skill. That's a whole another level, but that's the shift that is happening. And that's why I think more and more people distrust IGN, because there's no transparency involved. There's no real understanding and no real discussion, because everybody just scrolls down and just looks at the number and then makes a determination based off of that. And that in itself is the core problem with the review and IGN's process. And ultimately with Dan Stapleton's own frustration, but in a way, his own ignorance to the situation at hand. Anyway, guys, that's it for the gaming discussion part of this video. This is class dismissed. When we talk about real life stuff here, I think this is an important aspect. You guys have really responded beautifully. The positive messages have been so overwhelming. And so, yes, this has been something we've been working on all year here. And it's only been able to really kind of come to fruition over the last couple of weeks. This last month has been spectacular. And no, I do not anticipate at this level of growth now that Starfield is truly out in the wild. I'm enjoying the heck out of the game, but let's actually talk about some real life stuff here for a little bit, because this is important. Now, there's unfortunately some things going on in the community which are hard, and we're going to talk about that, but we're talking about that with the focus of hope, and hopefully, try to essentially lift each other up in this way. But I want to talk about what Christy says, I took out a loan to buy a car after a rough breakup to try and make myself feel better. It didn't work. Shocker. Now 2.5 years later, and I'm still plagued with monthly payments. I only have about 5 months left of payments, and then I'm free. At least I learned not to impulsively lend money to try and fix an issue which can't be fixed by money. And now we're going to get a mortgage next. Now, I'm excited for mortgages. I would totally recommend, and Dave, recommends getting the 15. It's going to help you build that, because once you start seeing how little of principal you pay for your payment, all of a sudden, hopefully that lights a fire under your butt, so that you're like, wait a minute, I can make extra payments and we can actually own this house, and then I just need to pay taxes and insurance. I can make taxes and insurance money by flipping burgers. It's like that's the dream there. But what I would say in this case also is that I used to be suckered into that buying of a new car aspect. Now the way I justified it is I always tried to do a 3-year note. So if I couldn't afford it with a 3-year note, then I couldn't afford the car, and then I would just drive it till its wheels fell off. But thankfully, I don't have that car lust anymore, which is really nice. It's a real blessing to me personally, because car debt tends to be one of the biggest things that's sucking the life out of people's wealth. Student loans and cars, man, like that's essentially what's, I think, crushing the American dream. Every which way. Now, I would say this as a piece of advice: like, cars are cool, and at some point, go play Forza, and drive the cars of your dreams virtually, and in real life drive a beater car, and then build your wealth so that later in life you can drive whatever the hell you want, as opposed to basically just financing your future away, because cars are a depreciating asset. They're not getting higher up in value. They lose value, put you underwater, and basically the car owns you. You don't own the car. And this is where we get into the real life story of one of the community members here, a friend of mine, Mike. He messaged me the other day. His car got repoed, and he does DoorDash. That's his livelihood. And yeah, he had to go and work, really hard, got his car back, but now again he's behind the 8 ball, and life is really hard. Mike and what he's been through in his life is hard. He shared a lot of this stuff with me, and I keep him in my prayers. I've helped him out when I can, and I reached out to him and said, dude, I will pay for you to go to Financial Peace University. This is something that will help you. But there's other key problems there. So he's in a fight or flight mode right now. So if you're a praying type, keep Mike in your prayers, and hopefully we can, that things can start moving kind of in a positive way. The guy makes a lot of sacrifices. He has a YouTube channel. I'll tag it, include it in the description. He hasn't been posting videos because he's working his ass off right now, because he's behind that 8 ball. And as somebody, when I grew up, I remember getting in the car and because mom needed to go drive it because the repo people were coming to pick it up. And that's something I grew up. That's an experience that I had. And I know that from the kid perspective. From the adult perspective, I think it's 1,000 times harder. I think no matter what, you're going to feel like you're failing. And the thing is that you can still win. You can still fight. You can still pick yourself up. And unfortunately, that's where, I'm over here being a cheerleader because, you know, that's just what I can be in this situation. And hopefully we can help Mike out and do some good things. I know he works hard, and I know that it's, you know, it sucks, but that's just the true story. That's what's going on right now. So I appreciate, you know, all of you guys for hanging out with me as a part of this. I want this to be a fire on, you know, for you, to make sure that you're not necessarily getting hook, line, and synced into these ideas that, you know, oh, it's just a payment. It's just a payment. It changes the relationship of everything. And that's why one of the things I don't loan money, because it changes the relationships of that. And so, like, if I am able to give money, I give it, and I give it as a gift, not as a loan, because I don't want anybody being indebted to me. If I'm going to tell you to get out of debt and pay off your debt, you know, and live free, I'm not going to be somebody who's going to be your somebody's landlord. I'm not. That feels disgusting. You know, like, I wouldn't like that one bit. But anyway, keep Mike in your prayers, please. And also, if you guys have any prayer requests, you can always send them my way. My list of people to pray for and offer my mass for grows, you know, every day, especially with some of the trolls. They don't like it when I say I'm going to pray for them, but that's, you know, when you hit me up in DMs and you call me like horrible things, I'm just going to add you to the list, and I'm just going to keep praying for you. And so that's what you get for it, I guess. A positive, but in a way, kind of maybe a little bit of snarky positive from me in this case. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, I've been forgetting to do the like call outs, but if we could get 100 likes on this video, I think that would be freaking stellar. And I do appreciate you guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Guys, go have a great day. Be good to each other if you can. And if you can't, I guess, you know, just shut up about it. So anyway, y'all have a good one, and I'll see you later. Bye.